Welcome to the Healers Café, the number one show for medical practitioners and holistic healers to have heart to heart conversations about their day to day lives while sharing their expertise for improving your health and wellness. So, welcome to the Healers Cafe. And today I have with me Mitch Webb, and he's a health coach and nervous system expert who helps clients heal from the inside out. He works one-on-one with people dealing with gut issues, anxiety, autoimmune symptoms, fatigue, burnout, and other chronic conditions that haven't resolved through conventional approaches. And he blends functional health principles with deep nervous system work to get to the root cause. So healing isn't just a quick fix, it's actually sustainable. And I'm imagined so that it actually can take place, right? So, okay, well, I think this is a very appropriate discussion point for today. So, welcome, and let me just ask you, what got you focused in this field? What kind of brought you there?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on. And I really appreciate the introduction. Sounds so nice hearing it. What got me into this work? School of Hard Knocks, getting my butt kicked and trying to figure out solutions.
Okay, do you want to expand on that?
Oh yeah, how long do we got?
Well, the more
Yeah,
important
I'll
part.
give like that overview, and then if you want to dive into any of it, we can do that. Is that cool?
Sure, yeah,
So, when I was 20 years old, studying abroad in Germany. It was World Cup. Fell out of the second story window, partying, drinking, and hit my head. Had a traumatic brain injury, and that changed my life. A couple months after
yeah.
that, broke out an autoimmune disease, so like skin rash all over the place. And the more I do this work, I see that's very common after a big traumatic event, or while we're doing the healing work. And panic attacks, anxiety, had insomnia for 20 years until recently. Started sleeping again. Was on medication. They gave me immune suppressants and kind of sent me on my way. And that helped in college when I was, not really, wasn't really affecting me. It was affecting me a lot, but I didn't know what else to do.
Right.
A couple years later, went into the corporate world. Added a lot more stress there. I moved into a house that had black mold. Obviously, I didn't know that at the time. But I developed Lyme disease as a result of being in that environment with the mold. It lowered my immune system, and
Mhm.
Lyme is an opportunistic pathogen, and it came out that way. Mold and Lyme very similar in symptom that come up with that. Um, so I got into functional medicine, started to work on I found out I had heavy metals and I had diabetes or, metabolic issues. And so just did the conventional biohacking, not conventional, I guess it's more holistic and functional medicine route, but I reversed the Lyme, or I dealt with that, reversed the mold, heavy metals, diabetes, with force, with typical biohacking and functional medicine type stuff.
Yes. Okay. Can you actually specify not what your regime was or what you were told to do, but just because some people don't look at it like force, but I would agree
Oh
with
yeah,
you.
yeah, and that's
So
a
what are you talking about?
yeah. So like I was trying to fix my body. I felt like I needed to be the doer of my body. Like my body, I assumed my body was broken, and I was trying to fix it. And that's a recipe for disaster. And it helped. I mean, it worked until it didn't. I learned so much from these things. But I dove in headfirst to the biohacking world. I was fasting. That's how I reversed, low carb diets and fasting, and I pushed that so hard until I gave myself a thyroid issue. I was so afraid of carbs and exercising and doing CrossFit, and body needs carbohydrates, but that's just what the world was doing. And because I had head injuries, I assumed that I could like ketosis my way to healing. And I mean, you detox, liver flushes, gallbladder flushes, long ass fasts, 7, 8 days.
Mhm.
You know, gosh, every supplement known to man. I mean, I had a biohacking lab at my house. I had a hyperbaric oxygen, a sauna, cold plunge. When I had 15 different practitioners that I was seeing, and none of them were talking about trauma. And that's kind of crazy. Um, and so I left the corporate world, became a health coach, and started teaching this stuff. And I was really good at getting people to lose weight. But I kind of feel guilty at this point now. I mean, I didn't know that I was coaching from my trauma and teaching people how to overwhelm and force their way to health. I still use biohacking and some of these modalities, but it's not as a tool to heal. It's support for whatever's that day. And so going back to the story, though, unless you have any questions.
Well, no, I think you're gonna probably expand on that. What is fundamentally the difference between dealing with a trauma-based incident than doing your biohacking and putting Humpty Dumpty back together again by force?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm meeting what's here instead of trying to fight it or run away from it. It's softening into it and slowing down and feeling the emotions and feeling the memories bubble up and feeling the images and the symptoms and sensations and welcoming everything and trusting that the next step is always there, and if I can just be with it and learn to love it. And I have this analogy I've been sharing recently. It's like trauma is like waking up with dog poo like all over your whole body, and the things that we have learned to clean that, they don't work. You can't scrub it. There's not enough hot water and soap, and it's just like not coming off, and you're going crazy. And that's what I was doing. I was using what I knew, which
Mhm.
is avoid it, dismiss it, and then beat the crap out of it with. And I was in sports. That's the gear that I had.
Mhm.
I would run. I don't know if this will make sense, but I would run the football, and you could go score, but I wanted to go run somebody over. I wanted to
Mhm.
hurt people, and that was my aggression coming out, and anger and all the stuff that I was stuffing down. Um, Being a kid and not knowing how to deal with that, and feeling, upon years later, looking back, with so much hypervigilance and unsafety um, and so much anger and fear and all the things. And I'm so glad that I had those outlets, but that became the only gear that I had, is I'm going to overwhelm this with force. And it works in a certain situation. That's a good gear to have when you need it. But it's like being David Goggins all the time, and just yelling at somebody until they get it right. And that's what I was doing. I basically had to exhaust myself and
Mhm.
explore all the things to see that it wasn't working, and I had to figure out a new way. And that's kind of about the time I started diving into this work and learning more about the nervous system, and that became the lens that I see the world through. Is I'm the medicine. My clients are like, you are the medicine. Like, we know what we need. We've just been taught to, we've been conditioned to disconnect from ourselves,
Mhm.
to abandon ourselves, to take on all these protective roles like people pleasing and intellectualization and perfection. And we think that's who we are, but we're really buried underneath all of that. And, I say this work is the great red pill, because it starts by waking you up to your own stuff and your family and relationships and society eventually, and you're like, man, it's a different world than it was when I started this journey. Because I'm seeing things more clearly. I'm not in survival mode, and freeze and stuck.
Right. So, but do you think that it's the survival mode operating through you then that led you to choosing these types of, let's call it more invasive, but more challenging therapies, or, this kind of, ego-based therapies. I don't know what to call
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, that's all that I knew. I didn't know anything else. I didn't know
them.
my family is not. It doesn't know what emotions are. They don't know what emotional healthy is. You know, they don't. I'm thinking like emotional immaturity and how to say the other side of that. It's a lot of narcissism and emotional immaturity. I'm the black sheep. You know, I'm the problem.
Right.
You know, and it's we I heard a quote yesterday. It's like if we don't work on our demons, they raise our children.
Right.
You know, and
That's a
so
good one, yeah.
that's what raised me, and that's all I knew. Not that they're bad people either. You know, they're
No.
doing the best that they can, and they're in survival. And
Yeah.
they handed that stuff to me, and I used the only tool that I knew, which is overwhelming force.
Yeah. But the journey of overwhelming force obviously played a role in what you became and what your passion is and your whole health journey in the
Oh
end,
yeah.
right? Like it's, because I often think, gosh, how could you speed this up knowing now? Like, did you waste a time, or was that what your body kind of resonated with or needed, or you needed to go through that? You need to be shown that path before you could go to the next one. Like sometimes I wonder about information and how we come across it. You
I love that question. And I've thought about that a lot. And I mean, I think I'm in the position now that I can save other people a lot of time.
know,
And that's kind of what I'm doing. And it's real easy to look at missteps and mistakes and say, man, I could have gotten that earlier. You know, I would love to have been introduced. I wish I came with the operating manual of how to work with this human body and the emotion, all the things, but that didn't happen. And I'm grateful for my journey, and I wouldn't do it differently because it made me who I am. I wouldn't be. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm the kind of person that's kind of got to get my butt. I'm gonna say not anymore. I'm not, hopefully, but I
Right.
was the type of person that had to take the licks to understand. And my career in sports is what made me never quit.
Yeah,
My experience that I have attracts the clients that are perfect for me, and
exactly.
that's who I am working with, and it scares the crap out of me that someone can get a PhD and prescribe very strong drugs and never have done the work themselves. So how are you going to meet somebody else
Yeah.
in their stuff? And so that was the gift, is I got my ass kicked and I learned from it. And maybe it
Mhm.
took me 1,000 freaking tries. But that's the beauty of the human experience. I think Earth is somewhere we come to learn lessons, maybe, and
Mm.
I've been learning mine.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, for sure. Well, no, but it's true, because somebody will resonate with your path or your transition. You're sort of the bridge of, hey, we can do it another way if you're open, right? And because now you've done it and people can get that, right? Because you've done it, so they
Yeah,
have to do
I
it,
think like coming from a man's perspective that's been like I have, I kind of feel like I'm like a Joe Rogan of the you know
right?
of the mental health space, where I can relate to a lot of people. I used to think that my superpower was that I could be anyone for anybody. I was like a chameleon, but I didn't know
Mm.
who I was. But I've worn so many hats, and I've been such a normal, broed out frat boy, jock, redneck, hunter. You never know. I have so many interests, and I feel like I can relate to the men, and I think. Where I mean, to be honest, get into this work, and a lot of the guys feel very feminine, and it's not that's bad. I tend to be more friends with girls now than I do with guys because they do the work and they can understand. So I get that,
Right.
but it's being. I think it's a little bit more approachable, certainly for the men that I'm working with, because mm, they're not as interested in the work as the women are. It seems like, to me, that's my perception.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I think, whether it's cultural or whatever, but there definitely is. I see what you're saying. It's not,
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like, oh, I've never experienced what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, unless you're asleep.
Now, okay, so let's talk about uh, the work you're doing now, right? So how do you start with people? They meet you, there's some association to the journey, they feel some connection there. How do you actually start with them? How do you get them to start their journey? Typically, I mean, I'm generalizing, of course.
You know, it's funny you ask that question because that used to make me so uncomfortable. Um, until I got some really good, and I'm still learning. You know, I got some good tips from my mentor, Irene Lyon. And, you know, health coaching is way easy. You know, I can come in and I'm like, all right, where do you want to go? All right, cool. Where are you at now? All right, yeah. You know, what have you tried? You know, that, okay, cool. And I can build out a plan and we're doing the plan and, you know, we're just kind of going. There's an outcome and I know where you want to go and where you've been and what you tried and what's worked and what's not and let's navigate around that's easy. You know, well, and this is easy too, but in this work we have to meet the moment and trust the I don't know, the quantum field, the environment, whether we're in person or not. Um,
Mhm.
and so how I come in, where I start, I don't know. I can't really say. That's kind of hard to say. Where do you start? I think I'm starting by building rapport and building a relationship and trying to understand where this person's at and what kind of capacity they have, um, what school skills they have, whether that's, you know, physical, emotional, um, and I really start with what's the low hanging fruit. Like their nervous, I have to trust that their nervous system will show me what where we need to go. I don't want to go to level 3 right away. I want to start at level 1. I want to start at the level that you're at, you know, and
Mhm.
um, it takes some from my experience it's just building a relationship, building a conversation, and the next step will reveal itself. And if I'm trusting that and they're trusting that, learn to trust that, kind of modeling that in the call, that our nervous system is the map and it's going to provide the next step. And
Mhm.
if I can get out of the way with me having some expectation or some attachment to an outcome, and I can just be here with this person and their system feels safe, it's going to say, hey, here I am. And it may be we start with food. It may be we start with environmental health and learning about circadian biology and grounding and, you know, avoiding blue light and then at night and getting sunlight in the morning and, you know, working on environmental stressors like Wi-Fi and fragrances that are inside and cleaning supplies that are in the house. Like if people are coming to me, they're typically got a lot of symptoms. They're sick. Some, you know, they tried a lot of things and nothing's working. And so I want to make sure they've got the foundation of are they eating good food? Are they moving? Are they sleeping? Are they drinking water? Are they getting outside? What are their relationships like? Like all that stuff is going to tell me what's
Mhm.
going on. And then from there, if the foundation is checked, and then we're going into things like building of capacity, learning how to orient and be here now and follow our impulse and um, you know, and once we're doing, it depends on a lot of my clients right now are more in a sensitized state. So they're,
Mhm.
it's kind of like global high with a lot of over and under coupling. And, and there's a lot of fear in that and a lot of fixing, right? So they're using the biohacking stuff and they're end up chasing their tail and they've got so much adrenaline and, hyper-vigilance and what's the word, bewilderment in the system. They're trying to figure it out. You know, it's like, hey, that person doesn't need to be doing somatic work yet. That person needs to learn to meet that fear and be in the fire and know it's not going to burn them, and learn all these compulsive behaviors that they're engaging in that are keeping them stuck. And yeah, I mean
Mhm.
it's like a web, right? And it seems so complicated, but to me it feels like having a lot of tools at my disposal, and if I listen really good, the person will tell me what they need.
What would your life be like if you were pain-free? If you were one of the millions who suffer from chronic pain, the thought of just one day without it may seem impossible. This is often because conventional medicine tends to fall short in the treatment of pain. opting to prescribe pills or recommend surgery rather than getting to the root cause of the problem. But if you are suffering with emotional or physical pain, there is hope. Join the founder and CEO of Bowen College, Manon Bolliger, live online for your body-mind reboot. Learn how to listen to your symptoms and get to the root cause of your pain. Plus, be trained in basic Bowen therapy moves so that you can reboot your body for optimal health. You don't have to live in pain. You can heal. Stop the pain pill cycle by visiting www.yourbodymindreboot.com to learn more and to register.
Which one? Yeah, which one's the one to
Yeah.
work with first? Yeah. So is that kind of your journey? How it changed? I mean, you took yourself in hand, but not fixing it, more just listening to what your body was telling you, or how would you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, eventually,
Yeah,
uh,
but the transition.
and it's
Mm.
more recent, to be honest. Like the fixing and figuring out, like I was very sensitized myself. I was crushed with fatigue and tons of anxiety, and freeze with bunch of sympathetic and my life was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. I'm avoiding more and um, doing everything I can to put the fire out. And I had some great mentors along the way. There's a time when I couldn't really feel my own intuition. I think our body is the map, and it pulls us out of whatever health hellhole we're in. And I couldn't listen, so I had someone that was a medium, and they were helping me, connect to the source and guides and get information. And I was dependent on her, and then I was dependent on stuff. I mean, there's so many things when I couldn't listen to my body. I had other people that were helping me, and I was doing all the research and just trying to fit a square through a circle, and yeah, it took a lot of repetition to get to the place where I'm like, okay, I'm going to surrender to this, and I'm going to I'm going to walk through the fire of learning that my symptoms can't hurt me, and I'm going to put down the compulsive behavior, and I'm going to just feel my body and, somatically track in a way that memories and emotions come up, and I'm kind of letting a little bit out at a time. And that took 3 or 4 years of doing this work. That's been in the last 6 months, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
made a big turnaround doing that type of stuff. But here's the thing: is it's like I had all these pieces from all these mentors and things that I'd learned, and when things click, for me, I was just talking to Irene, earlier today, and it's like I take these like quantum jumps because I've got so many resources and so much experience that when I get what I need, it's like it shoots me forward quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing too, like I could intellectualize it, like
Yeah.
I knew the science and I knew how it worked, and it's like my body just hadn't caught up yet. Like I didn't have the capacity to do the work that I knew my body needed because
Right.
sensitization thing was in the way. I had to deal with that first.
Okay, so I want to talk two things. The sensitization, could you like expand a little bit more what that was for you so that it's kind of becomes realer? And the other part is surrender. What is that for you? But let's start with the first one. I'll try and remember the second one.
I wrote it down, so
Oh, good, okay. That's
yeah. So sensitization is when we've got hypervigilance so we have an initial scary situation that happens, there's fear, and then there's symptoms, and then there's a secondary fear of the thing happening again. Now we're creating like these neuroplastic symptoms.
right.
So like, for example, whenever we were hunter gatherers, this came in really handy whenever I went to the area of the woods where the bear is and I get attacked and I don't want to go back there again. Right. And so my body's saying danger, danger, danger. But because that fear is in my system and it's not completing, um, it's like it continues to build up, and it overwhelms and saturates my system with fear and hypervigilance, everything becomes a fear or a threat. And so my system is constantly in fight or flight. And we know from polyvagal theory, if I'm up here in really high activation for a prolonged period of time, eventually that high tone dorsal is going to come on. It's going to freeze and it's going to bring me down here. And I was just talking with Irene about this, and global high, it kind of means our nervous system is just naturally very high sympathetic, and so it's hard to get that to come down very simply. And and I was like, is that kind of the same thing? And she's like, yeah, but there's some overcoupling and undercoupling where for me, the way that looked is whenever I had a symptom, whatever happened 24 hours before that, I blamed. And it became all the things that I love to do. So it was exercise, it was food, it was people and places, and then my world just gets small. We get like agoraphobic can happen, meaning I don't want to leave my house. And we basically, the world gets really small because we're avoiding everything because everything's a threat. And so to kind of come out of that, I had to see the compulsive behavior that I was using to figure out what was going on and to fix what was going on. And so when I could see it, it's almost like a lens. Whoop! When that lens comes on, everything feels scary. My thoughts are spinning like crazy.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that, I don't even have those thoughts. I'm a completely different person. I'm in my window of tolerance. I'm feeling safe. I'm feeling good. I may have symptoms and things like that, but I don't attach to them and go on the ride. I kind of notice it, and if it wants to be here, okay, cool. You can. It's kind of like having a roommate that sucks in the background. And so if you embodied that person, you brought them into life, and they were talking to you like the sensitization is talking to you, you wouldn't listen for that long, right? So I'm like, oh, here it is again. I hear you. I'm not dismissing you and telling you to go away. I'm saying I hear you, and I can tell it's in my stomach. I'm gonna sit here for 5 minutes and tell me everything, and then I'm gonna go back to what I'm doing. And you can be in the background, and that's fine. And it's like everything is a wave. And so if I can let the wave come up and go down,
Right.
then it completes, and my brain isn't going. That's a priority. That's a priority, And eventually the brain goes, oh, he's not, reacting to this anymore, so we'll move on to something else. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does, yeah. And then because I feel like there's still between that where you become more the noticer. So you're not taking things like that the only reality is the, hyper sympathetic reality, that there's at least two realities happening. But
That's a good point right there. I want to pause you right there because I got this from Simona Irwin. She's a good friend now, so I've been working with her and in her community, and I love Dr. Weeks. Claire Weeks is where I first heard about this information. And what Simona talks about is when we start to do this work, yes, being the observer, kind of like watching a leaf go down the water, creek or river or whatever. And then she talks about these two rivers, and there's the river of fear, and there's the river of love. And so think about the river of love as like attachment repair and inner child healing and building safety and capacity. And so, yeah, I'm scared as crap right now, but I'm going to be really talking to myself nice and saying, hey, I'm here with you. I see you. Not like, oh, you're safe. You got this. It's more like, hey, I'm here and I'm not going anywhere.
right.
Because we identify these younger parts and we're able to say, what did that part need? Like, oh man, you know what? It needed to belong. It needed to feel safe. It needed to feel like it mattered. It needed to feel loved and unconditionally loved. And it's like, oh, guess what? Nobody's coming to give you that, but you can give that to yourself, and that's the magic trick. And it's just when that trigger opens up, all the things that I was running away from and avoiding, now I get excited for. I'm like, oh man, here's another one. Like, what's going to happen on the other side of this? Now I know it's going to suck, and I'm not like fun. I mean, I'm excited in what's going to happen and what I'm going to meet and what capacity can I gain, and what's going to happen with this, and like how much more can I love and learn about myself. And so it used to be, oh shit, here it goes, and now it's like, oh shit, like let's go. It's a little bit different, and that's a big change for someone like me that was debilitated.
Yeah, you know, you're just saying something, I don't know if I have the words for it, but my question, the next question for you was, how do you, from this observer, it's like it's a loving observer for
Yeah.
one, right? How do you get to the space of that trust, the trust in the universe, trust the surrender, like
Simona
they're
said this to
connected,
me.
but yeah.
I wanted to know. So I think uncertainty, what is it? Self-trust is safety, and uncertainty is a big part of not feeling safe. And
Mhm,
so ultimately we have to learn to trust ourselves. I never had that. I didn't have that language. I never felt safe. I never trusted.
mhm,
So
mhm,
that how do we do that? I spent a lot of time asking those questions. Like, yeah, I want to trust. What do I have to do? Do I need to write it down a million times? And basically, she said something that really makes sense to me, and it's safety is something, and trust is something that's built through repetition. And I would add to that, you got to see the ball go through the hoop. As an athlete, when you get the yips, means an athlete. I know how to hit free throws, but for some reason, uh, for certain periods of time, I can't do it, and it's driving me crazy. And so
mhm,
there's all kinds of tricks for the yips, but ultimately you got to see one go through the hoop, so you can start to trust it. You build a little bit, okay. And so for me, what was happening for many years, for a couple of years, 2 or 3, I'd say really 1 to 2 years, because I was consciously aware, I built some education. I knew I need to come up this wave and come back down to, hit the top peak activation and come back down and get back to a window of tolerance, a baseline. But I couldn't do it, and so I had this way of scaring myself out of it,
mhm.
from a lot of the teachers that I'd had, that was like, you're going to do too much. Now, for somebody that's listening and beginning, like, you better be a little bit, not scared, but hesitant, aware of doing too much. That's a big part of this
Mm,
work. Too much too soon is not pretty. So I basically learned a somatic practice where I could, this combining bottom up and top down. And I just kept coming up against that fear. And it was like, well, what happens if you sit there at that door, and just what happens next? And
mhm,
eventually I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to stop this time. I'm going to go through it and see what. And it was like, a minute and a half of some intense emotion that, on the other side, I felt like $1,000,000. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's all I had to do is sit with it. Now that's very simple to say that too. So somebody that was in my role or my position a year ago, let's say, that would piss me off. Um,
mhm.
but you got to build capacity and go slow, and learn to trust. And I think safety's built by those little drops. It's not some big cathartic. I wanted something like that. Somebody who has used overwhelming force their
Right.
whole life. I thought it was going to be this explosion moment, and I've had those, as
Mhm,
well. I wouldn't recommend them.
mhm,
I find that the little practice and the little drops
mhm,
and the consistency with staying inside my capacity a little bit more, having good people around me, and then
mhm.
feeling the
Yep.
results of staying with it and going, oh wow, this is way better. Because I feel like
Yeah.
you go up that ride. Let's
Mhm,
call it a, what is it when you do this roller coaster? When you're going up it, man, it gets intense. And so I think if you get scared and you stop and you let your thoughts bring you out of the experience,
mhm,
going back into that's a backlog. The whole system's just getting clogged up, and that left me feeling like crap.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I once heard that to go through an emotion takes about 90 seconds. And
I,
I forgot who said this, but I remember that statement being pivotal, because myself, I would then just go, well, I'm going through, just stick with it, just stick with it. Where it's going to be done through. I just be with it. And it's like knowing that there is actually an end. It's not, because again, this catharsis and this all that, we're so trained to believe that that's the big purge and that it's all going to come out that way,
I,
and really it's much more simple if we can relax into it and know that there is an end and, you know, we do move forward, right?
Yeah, well, that's self-trust, you know,
Exactly.
that's trusting that what goes up must come down, you know, and
Apparently.
my therapist would tell me that, and I'd be like, that's great. I mean, I love hearing that, but like, when's it gonna come down? Because I've been fighting this emotion for 40 freaking years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm doing 30 seconds every time, not 90.
Right. Exactly. Anyway, Mitch, our time is up. That's it. You need to write a book.
I appreciate it. I definitely will someday.
Yeah, no, anyway, thanks very much for sharing your
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
experience, and yeah, thanks. And I'm sure it'll help a lot of people to
Yeah.
kind of hear the journey. Well, that interview with Mitch, being an expert in the nervous system, really brings to me home the message of how, when working with the body, like as a Bowen therapist, how important it is to understand the way the sympathetic system and the personalities that thrive in that type of environment might at some point benefit by more somatic, more slower down, body felt safe experiences, right? And Bowen is a perfect medium to really show the body that it can slow down, that you can also become the observer of your physical experience. And that's another door into the whole healing process. Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café. If you haven't already done so, please like, comment, and subscribe with notifications on, as I post a new podcast every Wednesday with tons of useful information and tips for natural healing that you won't want to miss.